Dead Space Remake, a game that completely revitalized a classic survival horror experience and honestly deserved a shot at Game of the Year. The original Dead Space was already a masterpiece, but the remake took it to another level, with modern graphics, tighter gameplay, and some amazing quality of life improvements. It was like stepping back into a nightmare, but with 4K visuals, and even more horrifying details. First off, the atmosphere in the Dead Space remake was next level. The USG Ishimura felt more alive, and dead, than ever. Every creak, every shadow, and every flickering light just added to that sense of dread. The developers did an incredible job preserving what made the original so terrifying, while also cranking up the immersion. They rebuilt the whole game from the ground up, and it showed in how polished the environments were. The lighting alone made certain sections feel way scarier than before, like you're always one step away from something terrible. But here's the thing. While the Dead Space remake was stunning and faithful to its source material, some people argued that it didn't do enough to push the genre forward, which is probably why it didn't take home the Game of the Year trophy. It was a fantastic remake, but it stayed close to the original's formula, which, for some, felt more like a tribute than a bold new experience. But here's the bottom line. The Dead Space remake did exactly what it set out to do, remind us why this franchise is one of the best in survival horror. The fact that it didn't win Game of the Year doesn't take away from the fact that it was one of the most polished and terrifying games of 2023. The Surge. I went into it thinking, okay, another sci-fi post-apocalyptic action RPG. But it's so much more than that. The whole concept of this broken-down, futuristic factory setting is just awesome. It's gritty, industrial, and feels like everything is falling apart, which really adds to that sense of desperation as you're trying to survive. And honestly, the world building is better than I expected. You slowly uncover bits of the story as you explore, and the more you dig, the more you realize just how messed up everything is. Now, I've got to talk about the combat because that's really the star of the show here. It's tough, methodical, and every fight feels like it could be your last. But here's the twist that sets it apart. The whole targeting limbs mechanic. It's genius. You don't just hack and slash randomly. You're strategically aiming for enemy body parts. Want that awesome new arm gear? You better take it from your enemy. It makes every encounter feel like a high-stakes chess match, where you're constantly weighing the risk of going for the kill or trying to grab new loot. And the exosuit? Such a cool feature. It feels like you're wearing this clunky, powerful piece of machinery, and as you upgrade it, you can feel yourself getting stronger. But at the same time, the enemies ramp up in difficulty, so you're never too comfortable. It keeps you on your toes, for sure. Plus, the suit customization adds a ton of variety to the gameplay. So, yeah, The Surge is a gem. Little Nightmares 2. From the moment you step into its eerie, twisted world, you know you're in for a wild ride. If you enjoyed the first game, this one takes everything that made Little Nightmares so great and cranks it up a notch. The atmosphere is even more disturbing, the puzzles are more challenging, and the story, while still cryptic, pulls you deeper into this unsettling nightmare realm. You play as Mono, a new character, but you're not alone. 6. The protagonist from the first game is there with you, and having that companion dynamic adds a new layer to the gameplay. It's cool how the game makes you rely on each other to get through the twisted environments. You'll need to work together to solve puzzles, escape enemies, and navigate the nightmarish world around you. It's not a co-op game, but that teamwork element feels fresh and gives you a stronger emotional connection to the characters. The world in Little Nightmares 2 is just as unsettling as you'd expect. It's full of grotesque, distorted creatures that'll send shivers down your spine. The design of the enemies is one of the game's strongest points. Each one is creepier than the last, and the way they move and interact with the environment keeps you on edge the whole time. There's a constant feeling of being hunted, which makes every encounter feel tense and nerve-wracking. What's really great about the game is how it balances those intense chase scenes with quieter, more atmospheric moments. You'll go from heart-pounding sequences where you're being chased by terrifying enemies. Bloodborne. It absolutely deserved to win Game of the Year in 2015, but didn't quite get the crown. I mean, this game was From Software at its peak, delivering an intense gothic nightmare of a world that fans still rave about to this day. It's wild to think that something this groundbreaking didn't take home the big award. First off, the atmosphere in Bloodborne? Unreal. Yharnam was this dark, twisted, Victorian city filled with werewolves, cosmic horrors, and nightmare creatures that just kept you on edge the entire time. The design of the world was so hauntingly beautiful, with that classic From Software touch, where every alley and hidden path had a story to tell. The game didn't hold your hand either, which was part of its charm. You had to figure everything out on your own, from the lore to the mechanics. And let's talk about that combat system. Bloodborne took the typical slow, methodical Souls formula and made it fast and aggressive. You couldn't just hang back and wait. The game literally rewarded you for going on the offense with that regain system. If you got hit, you had a window to hit back and regain your health, which encouraged players to stay in the fight instead of running away. It was like Dark Souls on adrenaline. But here's the thing, Bloodborne came out the same year as The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and that's where things get tricky. The Witcher 3 swept most of the awards that year, and while it was undoubtedly a great game, a lot of people felt like Bloodborne was overshadowed because of that. But for those who played it, Bloodborne was a masterpiece. Mad Max. So, I recently had the chance to spend some time with Mad Max, and let me tell you, it's an experience that truly stands out. The game captures the raw, gritty essence of the Mad Max universe so well that it feels like you're right in the heart of that post-apocalyptic wasteland. One of the first things that hit me was the attention to detail in the environment. The desolate landscapes and towering sandstorms are crafted with such precision that they almost feel alive. It's like every corner of the world has a story to tell, and exploring it becomes an adventure in itself. Upgrading and customizing your car, the magnum opus, is an absolute blast. There's something incredibly satisfying about tearing through enemies with a fully upgraded, heavily armed vehicle. And the thrill of high-speed chases and explosive battles really keeps you on the edge of your seat. The narrative is another strong point. Max's journey, filled with intense personal struggles and high-stakes encounters, is engaging from start to finish. It's not just about surviving. It's about finding purpose in a world that's gone mad. The characters you meet along the way, each with their own quirks and backstories, add depth to the story. What's more, the game does a great job of balancing action with exploration. There's always something to discover, whether it's hidden loot, side quests, or just interesting details in the environment. It encourages you to take your time and really soak in the world around you. The combat mechanics are solid. Infamous Second Son. It's such a great pick when looking back at favorite games, especially after all these years. It's one of those games that might not always get mentioned in the big best-of-all-time list, but for those who played it, it really leaves a lasting impression. The game came out as one of the earlier titles for the PS4, and honestly, it still holds up really well. You step into the shoes of Delson Rowe, a rebellious guy who suddenly gets these insane superpowers. What I love about the game is how good it feels to actually use those powers. Whether you're running up buildings, gliding through the air, or just wrecking shop with your abilities, the movement and action feel super smooth and fun. The game absolutely nails that sense of power, which, let's face it, is what we're all here for in a superhero-style game. Seattle is the backdrop for all the action, and they did such a good job with the city's vibe. It's not a carbon copy of the real Seattle, but it's got enough personality to feel alive, and the way the environment changes based on your actions is a nice touch. That whole dynamic, where your choices matter, whether you want to be a hero or lean into a more destructive, rebellious path, adds a layer of replayability. And honestly, both paths are equally fun. Infamous Second Son really nails that feeling of freedom, and the pacing keeps you engaged from start to finish. It's one of those games where you can easily lose hours just exploring, testing out your powers, and getting into epic showdowns with the game's enemies. Metro Exodus. This game is something else. If you're into immersive worlds with deep storytelling, this one's going to grab you right from the start. I remember jumping in, and immediately, I felt like I was actually there, trudging through the post-apocalyptic Russian wasteland, feeling every bit of that bleak, yet oddly beautiful atmosphere. What's really cool about Metro Exodus is how it takes the series from the underground tunnels and opens it up to these massive open areas without losing that signature claustrophobic tension. You still get those tight, nerve-wracking moments where you're creeping through dark, creepy tunnels. But now, you also have these wide-open spaces that make you feel a sense of freedom and danger at the same time. There's something about walking through a desolate, snowy wasteland and then hearing the distant howl of a mutant that gets your heart racing. Artyom's journey is such an emotional one. He's not just trying to survive. He's out there searching for hope, for a place where humanity can rebuild. You can feel how much this means to him and his crew. That bond between them, especially with his wife Anna, really hit me. You're not just a lone wolf. You've got a family, a team that cares for each other, and that gives everything this extra layer of tension. You want to protect them, to keep them safe. You've got to constantly think about how you're using your resources. Do you craft more ammo, or do you focus on a new gas mask filter because the radiation's about to kill you? That balance adds a lot of strategy to the game. Doom Eternal, a game that's just pure adrenaline. From the moment you start, it's like the game grabs you by the collar and throws you into this insane, demon-filled chaos. The pacing is so fast and relentless, it makes you feel like this unstoppable force. You're not just playing as the Doomslayer, you are the Doomslayer, and it's awesome. One thing I love about Doom Eternal is how it forces you to play aggressively. You can't just hide behind cover and pick off enemies from a distance like in other shooters. No way. You have to get in their faces, constantly moving, switching weapons, and using your chainsaw to keep your ammo up. It's this perfect mix of strategy and brutality. There's no time to breathe. And honestly, that's what makes it so much fun. Every fight feels like a frantic dance of destruction, and once you get the rhythm down, it's such a rush. The combat loop is where it really shines. You're always juggling resources, health, armor, ammo, and you get those by fighting. Need health? Glory kill a demon. Low on armor? Set enemies on fire with the flame belch. It's a constant back and forth, and it makes every encounter feel dynamic. You never just shoot your way through a room, you're managing the chaos, and that's what makes it so addicting. And the weapons, man, each one feels so satisfying. The shotgun, the plasma rifle, the BFG, it's all there, and it's all beefed up to feel more powerful than ever. Doom Eternal is an absolute must-play. It's intense, it's challenging, and it's just pure, unfiltered fun. Rise, Son of Rome. You know, when I first fired up Rise, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I'd heard mixed things over the years, but it really surprised me in a lot of good ways. Right from the start, the visuals pulled me in. I mean, this game is stunning. The world of ancient Rome looks so alive, from the grand architecture to the battlefields dripping with atmosphere. It's one of those games where you can just stop and admire the scenery. But Rise isn't just about looking pretty. The combat, while simple, is incredibly satisfying. Yeah, it's not the most complex system out there, but once you get into the rhythm of sword swings, dodges, and finishing moves, it feels epic. There's a real sense of power behind each blow, and the slow-motion finishers, pure cinematic brilliance. It made me feel like a gladiator, right in the thick of battle. The story, too, deserves some praise. Marius Titus, the game's protagonist, has a journey that's as much about personal revenge as it is about the fate of Rome itself. The way the narrative unfolds keeps you invested. And let's not forget the voice acting. It's top-notch, really bringing the characters and drama to life. One of the coolest things about Rise is how it captures the brutal reality of Roman warfare. You can tell the developers paid attention to detail, especially in the way soldiers fought, and how battles were choreographed. There's something genuinely immersive about leading your troops through a formation, calling out orders, and fighting alongside them. Guardians of the Galaxy. This one's interesting because it kind of had everything going for it, but for some reason, it didn't hit as big as people expected at launch. I mean, you've got one of the most beloved Marvel teams, a great developer, Eidos Montreal, and a focus on single-player storytelling, which is something a lot of people were craving, but when it dropped, it just didn't make the splash it should have. So, what happened? Well, for one, people were still feeling the aftershocks of Marvel's Avengers. That game didn't really land well with fans, and it made a lot of people skeptical about Guardians. Folks saw another Marvel game and thought, here we go again with another live service mess. Even though Guardians of the Galaxy is nothing like that. It's a totally single-player, story-driven experience with zero microtransactions or live service elements. But it got lumped in with Avengers, and that hurt its initial reception. Now let's talk about the controversial stuff. The characters. Some fans were thrown off because the game's versions of Star-Lord, Gamora, and the rest of the crew didn't look or sound like their MCU counterparts. If you're used to Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, or Zoe Saldana as Gamora, it might take you a second to adjust to these new interpretations, but once you do, you realize they're actually great. The writing is sharp, the dialogue is hilarious, and the chemistry between the Guardians is spot on. It feels like you're right there with them, and the banter between the team is one of the best parts of the game. The combat also got mixed reactions. Some people found it a little chaotic at first. It Takes Two. It's easily one of the most creative co-op experiences I've ever played. From the very start, you realize that it's not your typical platformer. It's all about teamwork. Whether you're playing with a friend, partner, or even someone you just met, the whole experience becomes this shared journey that's honestly so much fun. The level design is incredible. Every single level is packed with unique mechanics that are specific to that environment. 1 minute, you're in a garden where one player's watering plants while the other's chopping through obstacles. The next, you're in a clock tower, messing with time itself. It's never repetitive because each new area throws something different at you. The gameplay just keeps evolving. One of my favorite sections was when one of us could fly on this paper airplane while the other navigated obstacles on the ground. It's all about trust and coordination. What I also really appreciate is how the game balances difficulty. It's not too hard, but it does require you to think and communicate. There were moments where my co-op partner and I would be stuck for a minute, but it always felt rewarding when we figured it out together. You're constantly learning how to rely on each other's strengths, which is such a fun way to approach co-op. Honestly, what really stands out to me about It Takes Two is just how much fun it is. I mean, you're not just playing a game, you're sharing this experience with someone else, and you're both equally important to making it through the story. Whether you're laughing at the absurd situations or getting a little competitive with the mini-games. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. It got a bit of a rough start, but honestly, deserved way more love than it got. Now, when it dropped back in 2017, the game had a lot of expectations riding on it because Shadow of Mordor was such a hit. And Shadow of War did a lot of things right, but there's no denying it also stirred up some serious controversy, which didn't help its case at launch. First, let's get the big elephant in the room out of the way. The microtransactions. Yep, that's where a lot of the initial hate came from. It was a single-player game, but Warner Bros. Thought, hey, let's toss in loot boxes and microtransactions. Gamers were not having it. Understandably, no one wants to feel like they're being nickeled and dimed in a story-driven experience. What's wild, though, is that they eventually removed the microtransactions completely. But by then, the damage had already been done. A lot of people had already written it off. And that's a real shame because, beyond all the controversy, Shadow of War had so much going for it. First off, that Nemesis system, still genius. I mean, creating rivalries with orcs who remember you, plot against you, or come back from the dead for revenge. It's such a unique mechanic that really makes every playthrough different. The world felt alive, chaotic, and personal, in a way most open-world games dream of achieving. Then, there's the scale of the game. They took what worked in Shadow of Mordor and just made it bigger. More fortresses to conquer, more regions to explore, and even more dynamic relationships with your followers and enemies. Uncharted 4. This is one of those games that grabs you from the very first moment. If you've played any of the previous Uncharted games, you know what to expect. Action, adventure, treasure hunts, and a lot of intense moments. But Uncharted 4 just hits differently. It feels like a perfect blend of everything we loved about the series, but with a more mature, reflective tone. Nathan Drake is back, and this time, he's facing his greatest challenge yet. What's really cool is that the game dives deeper into his personal life, showing a side of Nathan we don't usually see. He's older, more settled, and you can tell he's trying to move on from his treasure hunting days. But of course, things don't stay quiet for long. The game does a great job of building up that tension between wanting to leave the past behind and being pulled back in. It's something that feels relatable, even if we're not all globe-trotting adventurers. The visuals in this game are absolutely stunning. Whether you're scaling cliffs in Scotland or exploring ancient ruins in Madagascar, everything looks so incredibly detailed. Sometimes, I would just stop for a moment to take in the scenery, which is something I don't usually do in action games. The environments feel alive, and they draw you into the story in a way that makes it feel like you're watching a movie, but also in control of the action. Speaking of the action, Uncharted 4 nails the gameplay. The combat, the platforming, and even the puzzle solving all feel smooth and satisfying. Outer Wilds. This game is all about exploring the unknown, and it really leans into that feeling of pure discovery. You're a new astronaut, part of this tiny space program from a small, cozy alien race, and you're launched out into space with nothing but your ship and a lot of questions. And I mean a lot of questions. What's so cool about Outer Wilds is that it doesn't handhold or push you in any specific direction. You have this whole solar system to explore, and every single planet is like its own character. Each place is unique, with strange environments, hidden stories, and mysteries that just pull you in. You land somewhere, start exploring, and immediately find yourself getting wrapped up in something unexpected. The sense of wonder in this game is unreal. I mean, you'll be cruising along and suddenly you're uncovering secrets that are far bigger than you'd expect. There's something magical about wandering into these ancient ruins or discovering strange technologies from a long-lost civilization. And as you piece things together, you start to understand that every single mystery is connected, which is honestly so satisfying. One of my favorite things is how much Outer Wilds makes you feel like a real explorer. There's no combat or big flashy objectives. It's all about curiosity. Every time you figure something out, it feels like a little victory, and the game respects that you're smart enough to connect the dots on your own. Another thing is the time loop. It's such a unique mechanic that gives the game this sense of urgency, but without being punishing. Rise of the Tomb Raider. This game really took me by surprise in the best way possible. I mean, I knew going in it was going to be a solid game, but it actually exceeded my expectations on so many levels. First off, the environments are stunning. Every single location feels meticulously crafted, from the frozen Siberian mountains to the hidden tombs. You really feel like you're on this epic adventure with Lara. I found myself just stopping to take in the views at times, which isn't something I do often in action games. And speaking of action, the combat and stealth mechanics are incredibly satisfying. You get this perfect blend of intense firefights, sneaky takedowns, and crafting that just keeps you engaged throughout. There's this real sense of progression, too. By the end of the game, I felt like Lara had grown so much, not just as a character, but in terms of abilities. You can craft your own explosives, improve your gear, and upgrade your skills, so it feels like you're always evolving. The game nails that feeling of being alone in the wilderness. There were plenty of moments where I felt like Lara was up against impossible odds, but her resilience kept pushing her forward. There's something really inspiring about that. It's like you're constantly in survival mode, scavenging for resources, battling enemies, and fighting the elements. I have to say, the tombs themselves are a standout. They're optional, but trust me, they're worth exploring. Some of the puzzles had me scratching my head for a while, but that moment of solving them is so satisfying. Gears 5. Even if you're new to the Gears series, trust me, Gears 5 is an amazing place to jump in. It's got everything you'd want in a blockbuster game: great characters, intense firefights, and a world that's equal parts beautiful and brutal. The combat in Gears 5 feels incredibly smooth, and every gunfight has that intense, cover-based strategy that makes Gears so satisfying. Popping out from cover, landing that perfect headshot, or getting up close and personal with the Lancer's chainsaw never gets old. There's something just downright satisfying about how combat feels here. Each weapon has a unique kick to it, so you're never just mindlessly firing away. It's all about timing and positioning. Plus, with the addition of Jack, your handy little drone buddy, you get some new abilities that mix things up in fun ways. He can cloak you, zap enemies, and even fetch items, so he's a true lifesaver in tight spots. And let's take a second to appreciate the world. Gears 5 introduces these open-world sections where you can explore on this sweet vehicle called the Skiff. Just zipping across the snowy tundra or the desert sands is a vibe all on its own. The world feels alive and dynamic, with lots of cool, hidden places to discover. It's not exactly a fully open world, but it's enough to let you roam around and soak in the atmosphere, and it really breaks up the action nicely. You're not just going from one big fight to the next. You actually have time to breathe, explore, and take in some amazing views. The story here actually has some serious depth. Assassin's Creed Origins. It didn't win Game of the Year, but absolutely deserved to be in the conversation. After the series took a bit of a break, Origins came back swinging, and it basically reinvented the entire franchise. This was the game that moved Assassin's Creed from a more linear, mission-based structure to a full-blown open-world RPG, and it did it in style. First off, ancient Egypt as a setting? Incredible. The world they built in Origins was stunning, from the sprawling deserts to the bustling cities of Alexandria and Memphis. You could just wander around for hours, exploring tombs, pyramids, and hidden secrets. The amount of detail they put into recreating Egypt was mind-blowing, and it felt like you were actually stepping into history. Plus, playing as the first assassin was a breath of fresh air. He was such a well-rounded character, with a personal story that drove the whole plot forward in a meaningful way. The combat system was also completely overhauled. Gone were the days of just counter-killing everything in sight. Origins introduced a more dynamic, skill-based combat system that required you to dodge, block, and actually strategize during fights. It felt much more engaging and challenging compared to the older games. They also introduced RPG elements like leveling up, skill trees, and loot, which added a ton of depth to the gameplay. But here's the thing. 2017 was a ridiculously stacked year for gaming. Stray. When I first saw this game, I thought it was just going to be a charming little game where you play as a cat, exploring a futuristic city. But as I spent more time with it, I discovered it's so much more than that. It's like stepping into an emotional adventure through the eyes of a stray cat navigating a post-apocalyptic world. First off, being a cat in a video game feels surprisingly freeing. There's something deeply satisfying about hopping across rooftops, squeezing through tight spaces, and knocking over random objects just for the fun of it. The game nails the physicality of a cat. Every move feels so fluid and lifelike. It makes you think about how the world looks from their perspective, so close to the ground, yet always agile and in control. The world building in Stray is amazing. It's this blend of cyberpunk and decay, full of neon lights and towering buildings, but also a deep sense of isolation. The city itself feels alive, not in the way you'd expect, but more like it's holding its breath. You meet these small robots along the way, and they're oddly human in their interactions with you, despite being machines. They add a lot of heart to the game. There's a sense of community among them, and you can't help but feel drawn into their lives. The story unravels slowly, but it's layered with meaning. It touches on themes of companionship, survival, and hope in a broken world. The bond you develop with the small drone B-12 is touching in a way I didn't expect. It's funny how a game about a cat, without any dialogue from the main character, can be this emotional. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. From the very beginning, you're dropped into this massive open world, and it's completely up to you what to do next. No hand-holding, no strict path, just pure, unfiltered exploration. One of the coolest things about Breath of the Wild is the sense of freedom. You see a mountain way off in the distance? You can climb it. You spot a random little forest on your way to a shrine? Go explore it. You might find a secret or even stumble on a side quest. And the game rewards you for being curious. Everywhere you go, there's something hidden, some surprise, some little detail that makes you feel like the developers thought of everything. And speaking of surprises, the physics and chemistry systems in this game are unreal. You can use the environment to solve puzzles in ways that feel totally unique to you. Like, if you're clever enough, you can create crazy solutions to puzzles that don't even feel right. But the game encourages that. You can even use metal weapons to attract lightning during storms or set grass on fire to create updrafts for your glider. It's like a sandbox that's just begging you to mess around and get creative. And let's not forget the combat. It's challenging, but in a really rewarding way. You don't just mindlessly hack and slash. You need to time your dodges, be aware of your surroundings, and think about your strategy. The weapon durability system is a hot topic, but honestly, it adds to that survival feel. You're encouraged to experiment with different weapons and tactics, which keeps things interesting. Devil May Cry 5. This game is just pure action-packed insanity. From the second you start, it's all high-energy, over-the-top combat, with Dante, Nero, and V, just going off in their own badass ways. The combat is smooth as hell, and juggling demons in the air while pulling off combos? So satisfying. I mean, it makes you feel like you're some rockstar demon hunter every second you're playing. And can we talk about the characters for a second? Dante is, of course, the legend, and his attitude is just as cocky and hilarious as ever. But I gotta say, Nero's new arm mechanic is awesome. You can pull off so many different moves with his devil breakers, and it adds a whole new layer to the combat. I love how every arm has its own unique feel, whether you're blasting enemies or zipping around the battlefield. Then there's V. At first, I wasn't sure what to think of him, but his combat style is so unique. Controlling demons to do the fighting while you hang back? It's weird at first, but when you get the hang of it, it's pretty damn cool. He's like this mysterious, edgy dude, but in a fun way. The boss fights, though? Incredible. Every boss has this epic scale to it, and the game is great at making each fight feel intense without being frustrating. And the way the music kicks in when you're doing well? That's gotta be one of my favorite parts. The dynamic soundtrack literally gets better the more stylish you get, so it's like the game is rewarding you for being awesome. Honestly, DMC5 has some of the tightest, most fluid combat I've ever played in an action game.